The palace of the Varelian Empire was built to remind everyone of age and power. The walls were tall and curved, like the ribs of a great beast. Pale light flowed through crystal veins in the ceiling, changing colors with the hour. Every sound echoed, every step measured. This was a place where emotions were hidden, and hesitation was considered weakness. Princess Alara stood near the wide observation window, her hands folded behind her back. Beyond the glass, the stars moved slowly as the station adjusted its orbit. She watched them, not because she found them beautiful, but because looking outward was easier than facing what waited behind her. A political marriage, that was the word they used. Clean, simple, cold. To Zalara, it felt like being sealed inside a future she did not choose. Her people, the Varelians, valued order above all else. Emotion was controlled. Desire was examined. Love was considered an old, unstable force that had merely destroyed their species in ancient times. Since then, unions were arranged by councils and data projections. Compatibility was numbers. Stability was everything, and now stability required her. The doors behind her opened with a soft harmonic sound. She did not turn.
She already knew who it was. Princess, said High Counselor Threxen, his voice calm and respectful.
The delegation will arrive within the hour. Zalara nodded once. I am aware. There is still time to prepare, he added.
This alliance is important.
Important? Always. That word? She finally turned to face him. Phyrexian's skin shimmered faintly, patterns shifting with his thoughts. His eyes were dark and steady, trained by decades of political balance.
You speak as if I am not prepared, Zalara said.
You are prepared in knowledge, Threxen replied gently, but hesitation has been noted.
Hesitation is not refusal. No, he agreed. But it is unusual.
Xara looked past him, at the guards lining the hall. None met her eyes.
You are asking me to bind myself to a species we barely understand.
Threxen inclined his head. Humans are not unknown. Merely young. Insignificant. That was how the records described them. A recent spacefaring race from a small blue planet, loud in transmission, fast in expansion, but physically unimpressive. Short lifespans, soft bodies. Emotional instability. They were useful, nothing more. They are adaptable, Threxen continued, and their territory lies between two unstable regions. This union secures trade routes and mutual defense. Zalara felt something sharp rise in her chest. So I am a bridge. You are a symbol, Threxen corrected. A powerful one. She turned away again, staring at the stars. And the human? Commander Elias Ward, Threxen said.
Military background? Diplomatic training?
Selected for psychological resilience. Selected, she repeated quietly. Threxen hesitated. Princess, you need not fear humiliation. He understands the honor.
Fear? That word almost made her laugh. I do not fear him, Zalara said. I fear irrelevance.
The counselor studied her for a moment longer, then stepped back.
The ceremony will begin shortly.
When he laughed, the room felt larger and emptier. Zalara closed her eyes. She had imagined many futures. None of them included standing beside a creature from another world, bound by law instead of choice. The announcement echoed through the palace halls, translated into a dozen languages. The human delegation had arrived. Zalara straightened her posture, smoothing the ceremonial fabric over her shoulders. The garment was traditional, woven with symbols of continuity and restraint. It was meant to remind her of duty. She walked toward the ceremonial chamber with slow, measured steps. The chamber was vast, circular, and open to space on one side. Delegates from multiple systems filled the upper tiers, their forms varied and colorful. This was not just a marriage, it was a message. At the center stood a single platform. The Varelian side was already assembled. Counselors, nobles, observers, all calm, all controlled. Then the opposite doors opened. The human delegation entered quietly. Zalara's first thought was confusion. They were smaller than she expected. Narrower, fragile-looking almost. Their movements were precise but not stiff. Their eyes moved constantly, taking in details. At the front walked the human. Commander Elias Ward. He wore a formal uniform, dark and simple, with no excessive markings. No crown, no display of wealth, just a clean design and a single symbol at his chest. He stopped at the edge of the platform and waited. No bow, no exaggerated gesture, just waiting. Zalara felt her irritation rise. Was this disrespect or ignorance? Then he looked up and met her eyes. The moment stretched. Most beings, when standing before Virelian royalty, showed signs of submission. A lowered gaze, a shift in posture, some form of acknowledgement of hierarchy. Elias Ward did none of that, but neither did he challenge her. His expression was calm, open, alert, not arrogant, not fearful, equal. Zala froze. It was not attraction that held her still. It was the sudden, sharp awareness that something was different. His eyes did not slide away. They did not harden. They simply stayed. She felt exposed in a way she had not felt before. Not inspected, not measured, seen. The chamber grew quiet. Counselor Threxen shifted slightly, sensing the pause. Finally, Zalare stepped forward. The ceremonial script resumed. Introductions were spoken. Titles exchanged. The words flowed as they always had. But Zala barely heard them. Her attention kept returning to the human beside her. Up close, he looked even more ordinary. His skin showed faint lines of age. His hair was cut short. There were small scars on his hands, barely noticeable. Yet his presence felt solid, grounded. When the ritual required them to stand side by side, he adjusted his position slightly, matching her height difference without comment. Not dominating, not shrinking. When the council spoke of unity, he listened. Really listened. Zalara tested him without meaning to. She spoke a phrase in Old Varelian, a dialect rarely used outside formal study. Many off-worlders relied on translation systems. The delay usually showed. Elias responded immediately in clear, careful Varelian. Not perfect, but respectful. A murmur passed through the chamber. Zalara felt her heartbeat quicken. Later, during the private reception, the testing began. It always did. Nobles asked questions designed to confuse. Observers made subtle insults disguised as curiosity. This was how the Varelians judged strength. Elias faced them all with steady patience. When asked about human military losses, he answered honestly. When challenged about human emotional volatility, he did not deny it. "We feel strongly," he said simply.
That can be dangerous, but it can also be useful. Some laughed softly.
Zalara watched closely. He did not react to the laughter. He did not defend himself aggressively. He let the words sit. Then one noble asked, "And what do humans do when your systems fail? When your plans collapse?" Elias paused. "We adapt," he said, "or we don't survive." There was no pride in his voice, just fact. Zara felt a strange sensation. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. As the reception ended, she found herself walking beside him toward the quieter hallways. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Elias spoke. "Princess."
I want to be clear. She glanced at him.
"About what?" This arrangement, he said. I understand your hesitation. Her steps slowed.
You do? Yes, he replied. If the roles were reversed, I would hesitate too. That answer unsettled her more than any insult would have.
You are not offended? She asked.
No, he said. I was selected for this role, but I don't expect gratitude or obedience.
She stopped walking.
He stopped too, immediately, giving her space. Zalare studied him. Most would try to impress me. He considered that. I can try, if that's required. Despite herself, she felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Amusement. That will not be necessary, she said. They resumed walking. As they parted ways, Zalara realized something troubling. She had spent the entire day dreading this meeting, and now, dread was no longer the strongest feeling she carried. Far above the palace, observers quietly updated their reports. The human had not bowed. He had not broken, and the princess had noticed. The alliance, they realized, might not unfold as predicted. And humanity, once again, had entered a room it was never meant to change, and simply stood there, refusing to be small. The day after the arrival, the palace felt unusually alive, not with joy nor excitement, but with tension. Princess Alara moved through halls that suddenly seemed smaller. Every whisper from a noble, every glance from a servant, seemed louder than before. She tried to maintain her composure, but her mind kept returning to Commander Elias Ward. He was not what the records had described. Not weak, not indecisive, not easily influenced. He was unpredictable. Not dangerous in the violent sense, but dangerous in the way humans could be when they refused to follow patterns. Zalare had grown up learning to predict behavior. Every action, every thought, calculated. With him, nothing fit neatly into expectations. The morning ceremony had been only the beginning. Today, the testing would begin in earnest. The Varelians had a way of examining outsiders. Subtle psychological traps, social pressures, and ceremonial challenges designed to expose flaws.
Elias had handled the first day with calm that bordered on shocking.
Zalara herself had not seen a hint of weakness. But would it last? The first test came in the form of conversation. A group of senior counselors gathered in a private room, inviting him to discuss interstellar trade, military strategy, and political stability. The questions were designed to trap him, to expose naivety or emotional weakness. They expected him to flinch, to hesitate, perhaps even to lie. Elias did none of these things. He listened carefully, asked clarifying questions, and answered honestly. When asked about human failures and past conflicts, he admitted mistakes openly. He did not try to cover them up with grand words or excuses. We fail sometimes, he said plainly, but we learn. We adapt. We survive. Zalara, observing from a distance behind a translucent panel, felt something strange. Pride? Amusement? No, it was something new. Curiosity. She could not remember the last time she had seen someone so calm under such pressure. The counselors expected him to bend, to grovel, or to argue defensively. He had done neither. He had simply existed as he was. That was enough to make their carefully constructed tests fail. Later, she followed him through the palace gardens. The plants were alien to her eyes, shaped like spiraling towers of green and gold, yet somehow familiar in their symmetry. The humans did not have gardens like these, she thought, not with this scale or order, but Elias seemed at ease, walking slowly, observing everything, touching the leaves lightly, as if he understood their fragile structure. You move differently than your people do, Zalara said finally. Elias looked at her, brow slightly raised. How do you mean? You adjust to the environment, she explained. You notice details and you act according to them, not according to a plan. Most humans...
I was told,
Rush or panic when things are uncertain. He considered her words. We learn fast.
We survive by noticing, by understanding, by working with what is in front of us. Plans help, but they can fail.
Adaptability is more reliable.
Ah. Solara nodded slowly. She wanted to say something clever, but no words came. She found herself walking beside him quietly, the silence filled with thoughts she could not share. Even her guards and aides seemed aware of the odd bond forming, one that went beyond ceremony or obligation. It was subtle, almost invisible, but undeniably there. The Council's next test came in the form of observation. They placed him in a room with multiple Virelian officials, each of them trained to unsettle, confuse, or intimidate. Their voices were calm, polite, but the questions were layered, indirect, designed to make him contradict himself. Humans, they expected, would react emotionally, falter, or make a mistake. Elias did not. He responded with clarity, honesty, and sometimes humor. When an official tried to imply he was unfit because of human emotional unpredictability, he smiled gently. "We may feel more strongly," he said,
"but that also allows us to act with conviction when needed. Feeling is not weakness." Zala could not hide the twitch in her lips.
It was infuriating. That calm, steady presence of his irritated her and fascinated her at the same time. She had always thought she understood control, understood strength. But here was a human, showing her a kind of power she could not quantify, one that relied not on hierarchy or protocol, but on character. Even the palace guards, trained to notice subtle threats, whispered to each other. Humans, they agreed, were strange creatures. They were small, fragile, but somehow dangerous. Later that evening, Xalara found herself alone in the observatory. Stars streaked past the window as the station adjusted its orbit again. Elias joined her, silently, without announcement. He did not crowd the space. He simply stood beside her, letting the silence speak first.
You think too much, he said finally, almost conversationally.
Zara glanced at him. "I think what I must. Maybe," he said. "But thinking too much can blind you to what is in front of you." She looked at him, expression sharp. "And you think less?" "No," he replied, voice calm. "I try to see clearly, without assumptions. I try to notice what matters." There was a strange honesty in his words, an honesty that Solara could not immediately dismiss. She had spent her life surrounded by people who said what was required. Yet here was someone who spoke simply and directly, without deceit, without pretension. She turned her gaze back to the stars. "I am supposed to marry you," she said flatly. "Yet I know nothing about your world, your people, your values." Elias remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "And yet, you are willing to stand beside me, at least for now."
She frowned. "I do not know if I am willing."
"I am observing. Then I will observe with you," he said. "We will both learn." The simplicity of his words disarmed her more than any ceremony ever could. The next morning, the council arranged a formal meeting with the planet's trade representatives. Zalara watched as Elias entered the room, calm and focused. The representatives, expecting a human to falter, immediately began their usual tests, subtle manipulations of numbers, questions meant to confuse, and assumptions about human capability. They assumed he would stumble. Elias did not stumble. He calculated quickly, asked questions to clarify, and suggested alternative strategies. Not because he wanted to dominate, but because he genuinely understood the importance of negotiation. His approach was direct, yet flexible. Every human instinct that Zalara had been told was dangerous, impulsive, or unreliable, he used as strength. At one point, a representative challenged him, implying that humans could not be trusted in long-term agreements. Elias paused, then replied, Trust is earned. We understand that. We also understand the consequences of dishonesty. We act accordingly. The room fell silent. Even the Varelian counselors, experts in subtle social manipulation, could not find a flaw in his words. Zara felt her fingers tighten around the edge of the table. It was infuriating and exciting. He was unarmed, ordinary by appearance, and yet completely unshakable. That afternoon, she escorted him through the palace corridors to observe the social functions her people considered essential. He followed her lead, but not blindly. He asked questions, noticed details others missed, and adapted without hesitation. The nobles whispered among themselves, noticing how naturally he moved, how quickly he learned, how calmly he handled potential insults. By evening, Solara felt exhausted. Not physically, but mentally. Her mind had been racing all day, analyzing every word, every glance, every reaction. Elias, meanwhile, had remained composed, alert, and perceptive. It was maddening. Finally, they returned to the observatory. The stars were brighter tonight, reflected in the crystal ceiling. Silence stretched between them again.
You surprise me, she said finally. Do I? He replied calmly.
Yes, she admitted. Every test, every challenge you pass with ease. It is not ease, he said. It is preparation, observation, understanding. That is all. Her eyes narrowed. And yet you also defy expectation. He smiled slightly. Perhaps the rules are meant to be understood, not blindly followed. Zalara turned away from him, staring at the streaks of light across the sky. She could not deny it. He had changed something in her perception, something she did not fully understand yet. He was a human, and humans were supposed to be weak, insignificant, unpredictable. Yet here was proof that those assumptions were wrong. She felt a strange mixture of frustration and curiosity. While a tad, for the first time in her life, she did not know how a situation would end. She had expected obedience, submission, or fear. She had expected ceremony, politics, and routine. Instead, she found herself facing a man who did not fit the patterns of her world, and she did not know whether that was dangerous or exhilarating. "Princess," Elias said softly, "you hesitate." She did not answer immediately. Her mind wandered over the day's events, the council tests, the subtle social traps, the negotiations, the observations. She hesitated because she could not predict him. She hesitated because she had never met anyone who challenged her understanding of the universe so quietly, so completely. "Perhaps," she said finally, "I have never faced someone like you before." He nodded, without pride. "Then perhaps it is time to learn together." Zalara stared at him, realizing that the rules she had relied on her entire life might not apply here. Humans did not follow the same rules. They did not measure power the same way. They did not value control above all else. Yet in their difference, there was strength, a strength she had never anticipated. And for the first time, she wondered if she wanted to see where this strength could lead. The night deepened around them. The stars blurred past as the station rotated slowly in orbit. Zalara remained at the window, thinking, observing. Elias stood beside her, silent but present. Together, they watched the galaxy. And for the first time, Ixala felt that perhaps the galaxy was not entirely predictable. Perhaps there was more than protocol, more than duty, more than expectation, and perhaps, for the first time, she was willing to embrace that uncertainty. The day began like any other in the palace, with calculated movements, measured greetings, and the faint hum of the station's life support systems echoing through the corridors. Yet something felt off. Princess Elara could sense it before anyone spoke. The subtle tension among the counselors, the hurried glances of the palace guards, the nervous adjustments of the trade representatives. Elias Ward had already noticed it too. He moved calmly through the ceremonial halls, observing the small changes, a shift in the posture of a counselor, the unusually quick steps of a messenger, the soft vibrations in the communication channels. Humans were often sensitive to patterns, and he had learned to trust his instincts. Something was coming, though neither he nor Xallara knew exactly what. The council meeting was called earlier than usual. Delegates from distant systems filled the chamber, their eyes restless, their movements deliberate. Xallara entered beside Elias, her ceremonial robe flowing behind her. The chamber's crystalline floor reflected the figures above, making them appear taller, more imposing. Her heart was steady, but her mind was alert. Counselor Threxin addressed the assembly first. "We have received disturbing reports from the frontier systems," he said, voice even and calm. "Unidentified forces have disrupted trade routes.
Supply shipments have been delayed. Several communication relays have been damaged or destroyed."
Murmurs filled the chamber. For most Varelians, this was serious but not unusual. They had contingency plans for every possible disruption. It was rare for any threat to surprise them. Elias's brow furrowed. Unidentified forces? "Do we have any description?" The counselor gestured toward a holomap displaying several routes. "Sensors have recorded high-speed craft operating without registration. They are beyond known factions. Their technology is inconsistent, unpredictable, yet remarkably efficient.
Our scouts report that they adapt quickly to defensive measures. We suspect a new species or a rogue coalition."
Zala felt the tension in the room spike. She had trained for decades in political and ceremonial matters. But this situation was different. It was unpredictable. And unpredictability was dangerous. Elias spoke, his voice calm but firm.
What immediate actions have been taken to secure the stations and ships along these routes?
Counselor Threxin's eyes flicked to him.
Defensive measures are in place. Protocols require waiting for orders from the High Council before initiating major engagement.
It is standard procedure.
Elias shook his head. Standard procedure will not stop something that adapts faster than you expect. We need to act now, with what we have available. Xallara noticed the counselors stiffen. They were not used to being told to act without orders. That was not weakness on their part. It was control. Command flowed downward, only in predictable ways. Elias was breaking that chain simply by suggesting initiative.
"What do you propose?" Threxin asked, his voice calm, though there was tension under the surface. Elias gestured to the holomap.
"We split the defense into 3 independent units. One will reinforce the supply lines, another will secure communication relays, and the third will actively engage and gather intelligence on the unidentified forces. Each unit should operate autonomously, using rapid adaptation rather than fixed patterns.
I can coordinate remotely."
A murmur ran through the council. "Autonomous action is risky," one official said.
"If the units make mistakes, they will make mistakes," Elias replied without hesitation, "but waiting for approval will guarantee failure."
Adaptation requires action. Xalara's pulse quickened. Every instinct she had told her he was right. For the first time, she realized that her people's greatest strength, their discipline, could become their greatest weakness in a situation like this. The council reluctantly agreed, if only to test his plan. Xallara noticed the subtle surprise on Threxin's face. The council had not expected their young human ally to propose a solution so precise and effective.
By mid-morning, the units had deployed.
Xallara accompanied Elias to the command deck, where the station's tactical monitors displayed dozens of small, fast-moving objects moving unpredictably through space. Sensors were scrambling to keep up, but Elias moved among the displays calmly, analyzing, suggesting, correcting. "Notice how they split their formations when we send intercept units," he said, pointing to a cluster on the monitor. "They respond to threats, but their changes are consistent. Their adaptation is fast but predictable if you watch closely." Xallara leaned in.
And what do you suggest? We force a pattern, he said. Make them believe one route is vulnerable, then cut them off elsewhere.
They expect chaos. We use it against them. She watched him issue commands with precision. His human crew, though unfamiliar with Virelian systems, followed him without question. Every order was clear, concise, and adaptive. Hours passed in tense coordination. The unidentified forces tested every strategy, but Elias's approach proved effective. When one group attempted to bypass defenses, he anticipated the move and redirected units to intercept. When sensors failed temporarily, he improvised, using remaining data to predict movement. Zalare stood beside him, heart pounding, realizing that humanity's unpredictability was not a weakness. It was an advantage. They did not rely on rigid structure. They did not wait for perfect information. They acted, adapted, and learned in real time. As the day wore on, one of the alien commanders sent a message. Commander Ward, the forces have shifted tactics. They are adapting faster than anticipated. Elias studied the monitor, his brow furrowed. Then we shift faster, split the defensive patterns again. We use decoys and traps. Their predictability and adaptation will become their weakness. The Virelians around him whispered. He was right. Their patterns, once thought unbreakable, were being used against them. But with careful observation and rapid adjustment, the human commander turned every surprise into an advantage. By evening, the attacks had ceased. The supply lines were secure. Communication relays were functioning. Scouts returned with reports. The unidentified forces had retreated, leaving their intentions unknown. Zalare exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. She had witnessed something remarkable, a human not only surviving in an alien system, but excelling by refusing to follow the rules her people had relied on for centuries. Elias turned to her, calm as always. It is not over. They may return stronger or with allies. But for now, the routes are secure, and the immediate threat is neutralized. Zalara's mind struggled to process what she had seen. She had spent her life believing that strength was measured by control, precision, and adherence to protocol. Yet here was proof that flexibility, observation, and courage could rival, even surpass, ancient discipline. Later, in private, she confronted him. You could have failed. You could have lost everything.
Yet you did not hesitate.
Elias smiled slightly.
I did hesitate, he admitted. But hesitation is only dangerous if you let it stop you.
Observation allows you to act, even when uncertain. Zalare shook her head. Your people, you are very different from us.
I have never met anyone who could do what you did. Perhaps that is why I am here, he said,
to show that there are other ways to survive, other ways to lead, other ways to protect. She looked at him, feeling an unexpected warmth. For the first time, she questioned not just the alliance, but her assumptions. The humans, thought weak and disorganized, had qualities her people had long abandoned. Courage, empathy, adaptability. Traits her civilization had once valued, but now saw as liabilities. The next day brought new challenges. Reports indicated that the unidentified forces were regrouping, possibly to test other routes or gather information. Zara accompanied Elias to the command center once again, determined to understand his methods. He worked with precision, issuing commands with authority that belayed his size and the simplicity of his uniform. Every movement, every decision was deliberate. He encouraged input from the Virelian staff, listening carefully, weighing their suggestions, and then making a choice based on observation rather than hierarchy. The aliens were amazed. They had never seen leadership exercised this way. They had seen command, obedience, calculation, but not this combination of patience, insight, and adaptability. Zala could feel herself changing. The rigid patterns she had relied on, the careful calculations she had trusted, now seemed limited, almost fragile. She realized that she could learn from him, not just as a partner in marriage, but as a guide in understanding a new way of thinking. During a quiet moment, she asked him, "Do you ever doubt yourself?" Elias looked at her, expression thoughtful. "Of course, every decision has risk. Every action can fail. But doubt does not prevent action. It only informs it. We adapt, we learn, and we act again." Zalara considered his words. She had spent her life suppressing doubt, turning it into order, structure, and ceremony. Yet here was a human, embracing doubt, using it as a tool rather than a weakness. By the time the crisis was over for the second day, the council recognized the undeniable truth. The humans had changed the outcome, not through superior technology, not through brute force, but through insight, adaptability, and courage. And Zalara, who had hesitated at the thought of this marriage, began to see its value, not for politics, but for what it could teach her. She found herself walking with Elias along the observation deck later that evening. The stars stretched infinitely, silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "I did not expect a human to handle this so completely." He shook his head slightly. "I did not expect to be tested by an empire as old as yours either. But perhaps that is the point. No matter how long you have lived, there is always something new to learn." Zara smiled faintly, realizing that she had learned more in these 2 days than in her entire life. She had learned that the galaxy was not ruled solely by protocol and hierarchy. It was ruled by those willing to act, to observe, and to adapt. And perhaps, she thought, that was why humans were dangerous in ways her people had not understood. Not because they were strong, or fast, or clever in conventional ways, but because they could change everything simply by refusing to be predictable. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of anticipation rather than dread. The future was uncertain, yes, but with Elias by her side, it was full of possibilities. And as the station rotated silently among the stars, Zalara understood something profound. The galaxy had not seen the full measure of humanity yet, but it would, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The day dawned quietly, though a sense of tension lingered over the palace. Princess Alara had spent the night thinking, walking the observation deck, while the stars stretched endlessly outside. She replayed the events of the previous days, the council tests, the unexpected attacks on the trade routes, and Commander Elias Ward's calm decisiveness. Each memory reminded her of the truth she could no longer deny. Humans were not weak, ordinary, or predictable. They were different, and their difference was powerful. Elias joined her as she looked out at the galaxy, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with anticipation. "The council convenes soon," he said. "They will want a full report on yesterday's outcomes." Zalara nodded. "They will also want to understand you." He tilted his head slightly.
I am beginning to, she admitted. You are?
Unlike anyone I have ever met. Your people are unlike any I have studied. And yet you accomplish more than most of our species could hope to achieve in a lifetime. Elias smiled faintly. We adapt. We learn. We act. That is all. She studied him for a moment, noticing how calm he remained, even in the face of the unknown. His presence had a strange effect on her. It unsettled her expectations, challenged her assumptions, and yet inspired a confidence she did not know she possessed. When they entered the council chamber, the air was thick with tension. Delegates from multiple systems filled the upper galleries, murmuring among themselves. The counselors sat stiffly, their expressions controlled, but their eyes betrayed a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. They had anticipated disaster, but the human commander had delivered success. High Counselor Threxen addressed the assembly.
Yesterday and today, our systems face disruption unlike any we have encountered in decades. Trade routes were threatened, communication relays were compromised,
and scouts reported an unknown force operating at the frontier. Standard protocol would have delayed response and allowed further losses. Yet, through decisive action, these threats were neutralized with minimal damage. Commander Elias Ward executed a plan that exceeded expectations. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some counselors looked shocked. Others appeared to study him with newfound respect. Zalara noted the subtle shifts in posture, the quick glances exchanged between experienced officials. This human had changed their perspective in less than 3 days. Elias stepped forward, calm and composed. "The threat has been contained for now," he said. "We have limited information on the enemy's composition or intent. Continued vigilance is necessary."
I recommend expanding reconnaissance while maintaining the secure trade routes. Further engagements should prioritize observation and adaptability over rigid protocol.
He spoke plainly without embellishment, without seeking praise. His confidence was quiet, measured, and undeniable. Zalara felt a strange warmth of pride. She had never expected to feel pride for someone from another species. Yet here it was. Counselor Varek, a long-serving member of the chamber, leaned forward.
Commander, your approach disregards centuries of strategy.
How can we trust that these methods will succeed again? Elias looked at him evenly. Trust is built over time. But ignoring new information or refusing to act because it does not fit established methods guarantees failure. Adaptation is the only constant. There was a silence. The council had heard these words before, but never spoken with such authority and clarity by an outsider. Even the most skeptical members could not dispute the outcomes he had delivered. After the meeting, Zalara walked with Elias to the palace gardens. The alien flora glowed faintly in the artificial light, casting reflections across the crystalline paths. She considered the events of the past days, the lessons she had witnessed, and the reality of the choice she faced.
"You have shown them strength," she said quietly. "And not just through combat or planning, through insight."
Observation. Courage. Pah! He glanced at her.
I do what is necessary. I do not seek admiration.
I act to protect and preserve. She shook her head. It is more than that.
They will not see it that way. You have changed how they view humans.
You have changed how they view possibility. Elias considered her words. Then, perhaps they have learned something valuable. Zalare fell silent, her thoughts returning to the future. She had resisted this marriage, hesitant because of duty, expectation, and fear of the unknown. Yet the past days had shown her that hesitation was not weakness. It was a reflection of understanding the stakes. And now, she realized, acting with courage and insight could create a future far greater than the one dictated by politics alone. That evening, a council meeting was called once more, this time to formally acknowledge the results of the crisis. Zalara and Elias entered together, the humans standing confidently at her side. The delegates and counselors watched, some with skepticism, others with cautious approval. Threxen spoke first.
The actions of Commander Ward have prevented what could have been a severe disruption of our trade and communication networks.
His decisions, while unconventional, were effective. The Council recognizes that humans, often considered minor players in galactic politics, possess qualities that merit acknowledgement and study. There were murmurs of agreement throughout the chamber. Zalara noticed that even the most conservative counselors had no choice but to accept the results. One of the alien representatives, a delegate from the distant system of Lirvok, stood. "It is unusual to admit this," he said carefully, "but the human has demonstrated remarkable adaptability. His presence in our political and military systems cannot be ignored. Perhaps we have underestimated your species." Elias's gaze remained calm. Humans are capable of adaptation and innovation. That is how we survive. That is how we thrive. Underestimation is dangerous. Zalara's heart swelled with something she could not name. Respect? Relief? Perhaps both. This human, whom she had hesitated to trust, had proven the truth of a principle she had always known, but never fully believed. Strength is measured in more ways than size, technology, or protocol. Courage, intelligence, and adaptability were equally important, and sometimes more decisive. The council meeting ended with a unanimous acknowledgement of the humans' accomplishments. Security measures were revised, reconnaissance increased, and strategic protocols adjusted to incorporate lessons learned from the human approach. Zalara watched as the officials dispersed, their minds clearly shifted by the events of the past 2 days.
Later in private, she turned to Elias. The council will remember this.
They will never underestimate humans again. He smiled faintly. Perhaps. But we did not act for recognition. We acted because it was necessary. She studied him, noticing the quiet authority in his posture, the calmness in his eyes. You have changed more than just the council. You have changed me. Elias's expression remained neutral, though a faint warmth touched his eyes. I am glad if my actions have helped. Elias considered the implications of her own hesitation, the choice she would now face. The marriage was no longer simply political. It was an opportunity to learn, to grow, to lead in a way that transcended duty. She had seen courage, insight, and adaptability demonstrated in someone she had once thought ordinary. Those qualities, she realized, could not be contained by ceremony or expectation. The following days passed with new challenges, each met with careful observation and deliberate action. Elias coordinated responses to minor threats along the frontier, oversaw negotiations with visiting delegates, and continued to demonstrate human ingenuity in ways the council had not anticipated. Zalara walked beside him, learning not just from his methods but from the example of confidence and insight he set in every decision. She observed how he treated others, with respect, with patience, with a willingness to listen. He did not dominate, nor did he falter under pressure. Every interaction was a lesson in how to combine intelligence with humanity, decisiveness with empathy. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in the observation deck, Zalara asked him, "Do you ever worry that your people will fail?" Elias considered her question carefully. Every species has challenges. Every species has limits. But failure is only permanent if you do not act to correct it. My people learn, adapt, and move forward. That is how we survive. She nodded slowly. And you? Personally? Do you ever fear failure? I do, he admitted softly. But fear is not weakness. It is a signal to prepare, to observe, and to act with care. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Zala felt a sense of awe. In her life, she had rarely encountered anyone who embodied that principle so clearly. She realized that she had relied on rules, protocol, and prediction because they were safe. Elias relied on observation, insight, and adaptability because they were effective. One approach ensured survival. The other enabled excellence. As the final day of the formal recognition arrived, Zalara stood beside Elias in the council chamber. Delegates from all systems were present, observing the outcome of the crisis. When Threxen spoke, he did so with measured pride. We recognize that human methods, courage, and adaptability have prevented disaster. This event will be studied for generations, and it is clear that the human presence among us is not merely tolerated. It is valuable. Zalara looked at Elias, noticing the calm satisfaction in his posture. He had not sought recognition, yet it came naturally. She felt a warmth in her chest she could not name. Perhaps it was trust. Perhaps it was understanding. Perhaps it was the first stirrings of partnership, of something that transcended duty and expectation. As the council meeting concluded, Zalara approached him quietly. The choice I face is no longer just about duty, she said softly. It is about what is possible.
Elias looked at her evenly.
Then act accordingly. Choose what you believe will create the best future. She smiled faintly.
For the first time, I do not hesitate. The stars outside the observation deck stretched infinitely, silent witnesses to the lessons of courage, adaptability, and insight. Zalara realized that the galaxy was wider, stranger, and more full of potential than she had ever imagined. Humanity had entered her world. Not to dominate, but to show what was possible when fear was replaced by observation, when hesitation was replaced by action. It was dictated by courage, intelligence, and the willingness to embrace the unknown. Elias turned to her, calm and steady.
Are you ready?
He asked. She met his gaze, no fear in her eyes, only clarity.
Yes, she said. We face it together.
For the first time, she believed it. Not because she was required to, but because she had seen the proof in action. Humans were not ordinary, they were not weak. And in partnership with them, her people, her world, and perhaps the galaxy itself could rise to heights she had never imagined. And as the station rotated silently among the stars, Zalara knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had entered the galaxy not with conquest, but with presence, and that presence would change everything.